Hello everyone. Welcome back to the Graphics Arts YouTube channel. My name is Dana. I'm from Divine Goddess Cards. Today I'm going to show you how to make a tag with an alcohol ink background using some of the Dura-lar matte. To start, I'm just going to put a little bit of rubbing alcohol on my tag. This is just some 91% rubbing alcohol, but if all you have is 99, I know in some areas that's really all you can get is a 99, that will work too. And if you don't have any, the alcohol blending solution will also work in this case. I'm just going to add a few drops of a pink alcohol ink. This one is from Tim Holtz. And I'm just going to take my little blower tool and I'm just going to blow that around until I like the look of it and until it's dry. Add a bit more in the middle here. I like those white areas, so I'm kind of trying to leave those, but I want this other area to look a bit more marbled. Okay, I like that, so I'm just going to leave that for a bit to dry. Now that my tag's dry, I went ahead and put it into my stamping tool, and then I'm going to be stamping using this set from Tim Holtz. This is the architecture set. I think I want it just about like that. The ink that I'm going to be using is the Alcohol Lifting from Tim Holtz and Ranger. This is a special clear ink that will actually lift the alcohol up from your background when you stamp it. So it's kind of like a reverse stamping almost. So instead of adding like a color to your background, you're actually removing what's there. And you just use it like a normal ink. You're going to ink up your stamp like normal. And then since it's a clear ink, you won't be able to really see it, but you'll be able to tell on your stamp where it's shiny. You probably can't see that on camera, but I can see it here in person. And then you're just going to stamp it down, and you want to make sure that you get good contact everywhere on your background. There we go. Now all that ink is now on my stamp, so I'm not going to waste the ink. What I'll do is I'll just grab a separate piece of paper, put it on the stamp, and then give it a rub. So then I'm just transferring the alcohol or the alcohol ink to this piece of paper. And this is just a regular piece of cardstock. And there, now we got a fun start to another tag or a background for a later date. And then I'm going to actually do this another time, just because I want to make sure all that alcohol ink on the background is lifted as much as possible, especially since this is more of a detailed stamp. There we go, that's better. I think I'm just gonna go with that just because some of my lines are blurring just a little bit. So I know that there's enough lift ink on the background. And then what I like to do is I like to just take a paper towel and just kind of dab just to make sure everything that can be lifted is. And this will also remove the lift ink. I don't really like to rub here, just because that lifting is still very much so on the background. So if you start rubbing it, you're just going to smear it around and remove all your details that you just put in there. And my paper towel is sticking. It's sticking to the sticky mat that I have behind here. It's not actually sticking to the project. Okay, there we go. Now I'm just gonna take the alcohol ink off my stamp here. You can clean it with some rubbing alcohol later. I'm just gonna get as much of it as I can. So there we go. You can see the image in the background here that's been stamped with the alcohol lift ink. And you can always go in, if you want more of a softer edge in this area, you could always go in with a little bit of rubbing alcohol and kind of blend that out, but I'm just going to leave it. It's fine. For the next step, it's going to get messy, so I recommend having some sort of protection if you're like me and have a ton of stuff on your desk. I actually have off camera here, I have some cardboard lined up, so I've kind of created myself like a little splat box type situation because we're going to get a little bit messy in this step. So you're just going to want to grab some acrylic paint. This happens to be distress paint in tarnished brass, but any acrylic paint will work for this. You want to get and then you just put a bit down on your work surface or your palette, whichever you have. And then I'm going to thin that out with just a bit of water. And then I'm going to be using one of these little finger dauber things, but you could pretty much use anything for this step. If you have like those little sponges on a stick things, I don't know what those are called, but you could use one of those in this case. And I think I want my paint a little bit thinner than that, so I'm just going to add a bit more water. And this was totally inspired by Louisa Heinzel. If you've seen her over on Instagram, she's been doing a lot of like splat tag things, so I wanted to try it out. So I thought, well, might as well do it on a piece of Dura-lar with some alcohol ink and then splatter some paint on it. Okay, so you're just going to want to give it a good splat. All right. So it didn't splat that much. I don't think I have enough paint here, but we're still going to work with it, and I'm just going to move it around with my little blowy tool thing. Oh, that looks so cool. I don't know if the camera's picking it up here, but the alcohol ink, the lift ink is actually almost created a little bit of a resist. So this paint is not sticking where the lift ink was. That's very cool. I'm just going to mix up a little bit more paint here. There's a lot of bit more paint. And then thin it out with some water. There we go. That should give a good splat here. And I'm going to do it in this corner. This way I'm not really worried about that hard edge that's right there, because I'm going to pretty much cover it up in paint anyway. Ooh, there we go. Stuck to my tag. That's okay. It's so interesting that that lift ink is creating a resist. I'll have to play with that more. That is pretty cool. I made kind of a sample tag just to make sure my idea was would work, but I didn't use any of the lift ink on it, so I didn't know that it would do that, but it's very cool. Okay, and then I think I want to add some right there. And just a bit more at the bottom. That is so crazy that that's doing that. Yeah, definitely gonna have to play with that more. Okay, happy with that. So I'm just gonna let that dry naturally. You could heat it with your heat tool, but I like to just let my acrylic paints dry naturally, and then I'll be back and show you the next step. Now that the tag is all dry, I'm going to go ahead and add my embellishments. This is half of the Perspective Butterfly die from Tim Holtz. And I'm just going to glue that down with my Artist-tac. So you just stick the back of your die cut or whatever you want to add glue to the side that has the dots on it and give it a good rub. This is a great thing to use the Artist-tac for, just because it's so delicate and, you know, such an intricate, if I could say that word, intricate die cut, that adding liquid glue to this would probably be kind of a pain. So I'm just making sure I've got dots on all the little bits there. And then I will peel it off. I'm going to grab my squeezers just so that I can get this lined up. And I think I want it about there. There we go. And then I'm going to use this set from Ideology. This is the small talk set for my sentiment. And let's see, I think I'm going to use this one. This says, live your dream with passion. And I think I'm going to trim that a little bit. So I'm just going to trim that in two, and then I'm going to ink around the edges. Any black ink will work for this. I just happened to grab my oxide and black soot. This just kind of makes it look like it has a shadow and grunges it up a little bit. I think I'll put that one here. So live your dream. With passion. Here we go. Cute. And then for my little top part here, I love to add some sort of lace or something to the tops of tags. So this is actually just a little bit of seam binding that I coffee dyed. I'm just going to tie that into a few messy bows here. There. And it's got a bunch of little hangy bits. I love that. And there we are. Here's my finished tag project for today. Thank you so mumuch for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're interested in any of these products, there will be a full supply list in the description box below. And the Dura-lar and Artist-tac adhesive can be found on grafixarts.com. Thank you so much for Grafix for sponsoring this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.